Phenomenal guest joining us in this moment. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, entrepreneur, investor, and the guy who says often the most amusing stuff on the Shark Tank show. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Let's start. I know you're up on Capitol Hill. You're trying to advocate for the small business men and women of America, which is super important. Obviously, the engine of economic growth in so many ways. What kind of headwinds are they running into right now under this administration? Like, what are they doing? What is this White House or this Congress doing wrong when it comes to the small businesses of America?
Well, let me paint the picture because I deal with this every day. I've got over 30 portfolio companies, primarily first and second generation families. In America, we think about our economy. A lot of people don't know this. The S&P 500, massive companies, biggest index in the world, but they only represent 40% of employers. And many of the people that work for the S&P 500, those giant companies, those employees are outside of the United States. Almost in some cases half of them, depending on the company. So domestically, who employs all of us? It's small business. And so what I'm frustrated about is right now, you remember the beginning of this latest banking crisis when Silicon Valley Bank, and unfortunately run by idiots, went to zero. But that caused a ripple effect. And what's occurring now is the regulators of small regional banks, there's about 4,160 of them, which really bank and provide credit for small business in America, are under tremendous pressure. They're being required to change how much capital they have liquid on their balance sheets. And basically what that means is they're closing their loan books. So it's very, very hard to borrow money anymore. This is happening at the same time that Congress has done $1 trillion worth of paper printing, which even hasn't gone out the door yet. One is called the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, and the other one is the CHIPS and Science Act. All of that money is going to the big guys. All of it. Not some of it, all of it, 100% of it, to S&P 500 companies. So you ask me why the stock market's doing so well. It's because it's got this unlimited lift of printed paper to go to them for free. It's basically free money. And yet nothing for the small guy. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now that is totally screwed up, imbalanced, not fair, and I'd argue un-American.
Am I crazy? And the answer may well be yes, so don't be afraid to say that. Some people out there are like, yes, you're crazy. It seems to me that we have never had a more financially illiterate group of leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, but in particular, the Democrat Party has totally lost its way when it comes to business. As a guy who is focused primarily on business, do we have good representatives from a financial perspective at all in your mind?
It's a great question. And my answer is, having now spent almost a year and a half going to Congress, and sometimes twice a month, it's a mixed bag. And it's really about executional skills at the state level. And where I look at states, I look at the governor. You can consider the governor of a state as the CEO. A lot of the policy around what happens. So I've stopped investing in states like New York, for example, or Massachusetts or California. I don't put a dime in those places. They're not open for business and their taxes are too high. My new focus is on places like North Dakota, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida. Those, let's call them managers, governors, senators, whatever you want, they're executing towards pro-business, whether it be big or small. And they've made it that there's a very interesting dynamic occurred after the pandemic. We have competition between states. Now, why would you ever put money in Massachusetts where Elizabeth Warren wants to take it from you if you're successful, or where AOC makes sure that no new jobs come to her jurisdiction? Why would you even go there? Why fight with those people? If they want to destroy their states, let them do that. I'll take my money and go to where I'm welcomed, where I can sit down with the governor, Burgum, who's now running for president, and say, what can we do together here? What can we invest in? Same with Florida, same with Texas. So I want to encourage people to make economic decisions wisely and to make sure that the people that vote for these individuals, and I'm not saying Elizabeth Warren isn't a very successful politician. She is. I just hate her policies. And I think that's a fair debate to have. I'm going to be going to the legislature in Massachusetts in October. I do some work at Harvard where I teach young entrepreneurs and engineers, and I want to make sure that we can get into a solid debate about good policy and bad policy.
If we could get you, and some of their staffs actually listen to the show, Kevin. We're speaking to Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful of Shark Tank, for anybody who's joining us in progress here. If we could get you to sit down with all of the Republican candidates right now at once, and you could give them one thing that you believe would be most important, useful, powerful for helping small business and really with it, just the broader economy. I mean, if you could get one thing right in front of them, so whether it's Trump or whomever, if they end up beating Biden, they could pursue it. What would it be?
Right now, I see this tremendous, I'd call it imbalance between the support that the S&P is getting, the big companies in America, and what we're not doing for small business. And so we have programs. We have two big ones right now, and I want to be very specific about this, and I've actually done this with both Republicans and Democrats. Sat them down when I get to the Hill. I'm very fortunate they'll take a meeting, and their staff, just as importantly, and say, okay, let me get this right. You have authorized $1 trillion for the S&P 500 in two specific acts, the CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. Where in those bills, because I've looked at them, you show me anywhere where you're supporting small business, your own constituents in your own geography that represents 60% of the jobs created in your state. Where's the support for them? And there isn't a single active act right now at a time when they need it more than the big guys. The big guys have no trouble raising money. Right now, the cost of capital for small business has gone from 4 to 5%, all the way up to 11 to 17% in a matter of 18 months. And nobody cares about them. So the only act I know that's active, and I know you guys promote this quite a bit on your platform, is the employee retention credit. I also do that. I've got a business called wondertrust.com, and all of my companies have applied for this, and hundreds more. And I go out of my way to say to those senators and governors, you extend this act for me for 24 months. For everybody in America that deserves to get access to this capital that they actually paid into. Because what's going on here is my companies and many others, millions more in America, during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, we paid our employees. We paid them even though they couldn't work. We kept them on payroll. We invested in them, our businesses, and America. And now you give us nothing? I don't get it. And that has not fallen on deaf ears. I've even gone all the way to the Ways and Means Committee, and I've talked to the chairman and said, think about this. You're going to have to do something for these small guys when things get worse in the months ahead. Meanwhile, back at the farm, you've made sure that everybody in the S&P is just dripping with cash. And nothing for the small guy? Extend this act for 24 months.
We've talked a lot on this program about red getting redder and blue getting bluer. You just kind of hinted at this about the importance of federalism, the governor as the CEO of a state. I don't know what state your home base is in now. You can maybe tell people because I'd be curious. But if you were advising someone young today and they were saying, hey, I'm thinking about starting a small business and I could base that small business anywhere in the country, where would you tell them it would make sense to go? And how much of that, I feel fortunate, Buck's now in Florida, I'm in Tennessee, we have no state income tax. The idea that I would pay 14 or 15% of my hard-earned income to the state of New York or to California or to any other state is crazy to me. But I'm curious, we get a lot of questions, Buck and I do. Hey, let's say you're 20 years old and you're about to graduate from college and you're interested, or you're just 20 years old and you've got an entrepreneurship bug. Where would you tell them, if they could go anywhere in the country, that you see the most dynamic business environments that they should consider founding a company?
Well, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. There's a reason Nashville has exploded over the last 18 years. There's very few cities growing as fast as Nashville. Why? A well-managed state with no state tax. The same thing's happening in Florida. The same thing's happening in Texas. Same thing is happening in North Dakota. They just lowered their state tax. It's not zero yet, but they're on their way there. Every state that I look at that has moved towards pro-business and lower state tax is growing. So if you're starting a business, and I advise all of my young entrepreneurs, look, you can run a business today from anywhere because 40% of your employees are not going to work in your headquarters. That's post-pandemic. That's what's occurred. That's our new economy, America 2.0 digital. And that means Don't stick it in a place where they hate you, where they just put regulation on you, where they overtax you, and they don't want you to start a business. They don't want any jobs. Don't put it anywhere near AOC, for example. And why would you ever do it in Massachusetts, where Elizabeth Warren wants to tax you if you're successful? What built this country and makes it great is entrepreneurs, and that's who employs 60% of the people. We now have this fantastic dynamic of states competing with each other. Reward the good managers, the good governors, the good senators with your vote and your business, and make sure that you're punitive to ones that are not pro-business. And let's hope they get voted out of power, because they are not doing their job and not carrying forward the American dream. Anytime you tax someone into oblivion and you just take the government and over-regulate rules, you are forcing those businesses to do the right thing, and that's simply move. That's how it works.
Kevin, how worried are you about a major downturn in the economy over the next, call it, year or so? I mean, we've been told for many months, I used to see the Goldman Sachs projection, 60% likelihood of a recession in the next quarter, whatever, going back now for a while under the Biden administration's tenure. Do you feel like we're out of the woods, or are we still just hoping and praying?
You know, that is the question for every investor in America, trying to figure out this extraordinary situation we're in. I mean, let's just take stock of what we know. We know that we have had the fastest rate hike cycle in almost history. It's very rare that we've gone from basically 0 to 5% in a matter of months. That never happens. And 5.5%. We also know, and this is extraordinary, and I've never seen it before, we're still at full employment. Anything under 4% unemployment is full employment. So not only is your cost of capital gone through the roof, but you still can't hire anybody to work in your business. And at the same time, we have that $1 trillion of free helicopter money coming in these two acts I talked about, the IRA and the CHIPS Act. And so this is a really strange force. We have inflation going up, and yet we're still printing money like a South American dictatorship. I mean, it's just unbelievable what's going on here. We actually don't need all this money at this point, but we're trying to do some things, and you can blame any administration because they're always trying to figure out ways to print money and get votes. I get that. But this situation now is an extraordinary one because we've got a lot of pressure points. So when people tell me, well, you know, there's a 60% chance of a recession in the next 6 months, they have no idea what's going to happen. Nobody does. And so when we're planning in our businesses, which we do each week, we plan for every outcome. Right now, it looks like a soft landing, but nobody knows that with certainty. So you've really got to conserve your cash. You've got to make sure that you have access to capital for inventory, and you've got to keep an eye on your receivables and run your business as a good manager. Same for a state. Same idea for the country. And so we're at an inflection point. We're rather a remarkable presidential cycle coming up here for a million different reasons, and you guys have talked about it quite a bit. But at the end of the day, what you're voting for, and I don't care what party you're with, vote for good policy. What drives America is good policy. I've never made money in politics. I make money in good policy. And capital and money, domestic and international, follows the path of least resistance. You want to make America, and American business the least resistive. You want everybody to invest their money here.
Quickly, last question for you. What's the best investment you've ever made in your life? What is the one that you regret not investing in? Because people think a lot about the successes, but I'm also curious what you passed on and you're like, I was an idiot. I should have 100% gone all in on that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me tell you what I've learned. And this goes back to Shark Tank. I've been doing Shark Tank for 15 years. I've seen thousands of pitches. I've looked at thousands of deals. And each year I do, 15, 17, 20 deals, whatever it is. And I'm pretty sure when I'm making them, I know what I'm doing. And I'm saying to myself, that's going to be a winner. That's going to be a winner. You basically think you know. The truth is you have no idea. What happens 3, 4, 5 years later is the ones that you thought were dogs end up being monster hits. I'll give you an example. One I just had a huge liquidity event in. This woman comes on 3 years ago. Anna Sky was her name. Anna Skaya. And she had a company called Base Paws. You take a swab, you stick it in a cat where the sun doesn't shine, you send it into the lab, and she tells you your cat DNA. And it can help the cat have a longer life. And I said to her, what, are you out of your friggin' mind? I can buy, your test is $29.95. I can buy a new cat for $5. A lot of cat people didn't like that comment in America. But
Clay has cats.
I invested.
My wife has cats, Buck.
I get it. I don't, anyways. What happened was she said she was so compelling, such a great entrepreneur, such a really driving force on that set. No one wanted to invest in her. They thought the whole idea was stupid. I gave her the dough. 3 years later, she sells the business to one of the largest pet divisions of a giant pharmaceutical company for over $50 million cash. It was one of my best outcomes ever. And I thought, that gives you an example. You just have no idea. It's serendipitous luck sometimes. So I do a lot of deals. And, I've been working with, let me give you an example, Barbara, for example. She doesn't even look at the numbers. She just looks at it, says, I like the guy, I like the gal, I'm going to invest in him. And by the way, the only reason Barbara gets to Shark Tank every year is I buy her a new broom.
Kevin O'Leary, everybody, Mr. Wonderful.
That's a great line. We've got to get to
what was that website?
It's wondertrust.com, and I've got a whole team of people. I've been doing this with all my companies that will figure out whether you do actually and are eligible for the ERC, the Employer Retention Credit, up to $26,000 per employee. I work very hard at this. I want every business in America.
Thanks for being on this. We're about to hit a break. Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, thank you so much.
Take care.